You've been paying for seeds you already have every single year. You walk into that garden center, you grab those little paper packets, you hand over your money, and you do it again next spring, and the one after that, and every spring for the rest of your life, unless someone tells you the truth. Here it is. Most of the food sitting in your kitchen right now contains everything you need to grow more food, forever, for free. Seeds, living roots, viable cloves, cuttings that root in a glass of water. Nature packed the instruction manual right inside the vegetable. You've been throwing it in the trash, and the seed companies, they're counting on you to keep doing exactly that. This video is about 12 crops you will never need to buy seeds for again. Some of them you can propagate starting today, right now, from whatever you have in your kitchen or garden. Others take a little more patience, but every single one of them becomes a permanent, self-renewing resource. But before we get into crop number 1, and I promise, this first one is going to make you genuinely angry about what you've been spending, I have to tell you about something I discovered that completely changed how I think about growing, cooking, and feeding a family. It's called Amish Kitchen Secrets. 2 books, 1 complete system, and it does something that almost no gardening content ever bothers to do. It connects the garden to the table and the table to the pantry. Because growing food is only half the equation, the other half is what you do with it, so none of it ever goes to waste. The Amish figured this out 300 years ago. Volume 1 is 100 tested recipes, real, hearty, from-the-earth food that feeds families of 4, 6, 12 people on simple ingredients. Volume 2 is 45 traditional preservation methods: canning, fermenting, root cellaring, smoking, salt curing, grain storage for 25 years on a shelf. Together, the bundle is $34. One time, no subscription, instant download, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there is literally no risk. The link is in the description. Check it out after this video, because everything I'm about to teach you will be twice as powerful when you know what to do with it. Now, let's talk about the crop that started everything, the tomato. Let's start here because this is where the money bleeds out quietly. A packet of tomato seeds from a reputable seed company costs anywhere from $3 to $6. For 25 seeds, maybe 30. A packet of tomato seeds from a reputable seed company costs anywhere from $3 to $6. For 25 seeds, maybe 30. Some of those won't germinate, some will get leggy, some will die when you transplant them. You might get 15 viable plants from a packet that cost you $5. That's 33 cents per plant before you've even put it in the ground. Now look at one ripe tomato. One, a beefsteak, a Cherokee Purple, a San Marzano, a Sun Gold Cherry. Inside that single fruit, that one tomato you grew or bought, there are anywhere from 150 to 300 seeds. 150 to 300 seeds in one tomato. If a packet of 30 seeds costs $5, what you're holding in that single tomato is worth $25 to $50 in seed packet terms, and you've been scooping it into the compost bin. Here's how you stop doing that forever. Wait until a tomato is fully ripe. Past ripe, soft, almost going over. That's when the seeds have reached maximum germination viability. Slice it open, squeeze the seeds and the surrounding gel into a small glass jar. Add an inch of water, set it on your windowsill and leave it for 2 to 3 days. You'll see a gray mold form on the surface. That's exactly what you want. That fermentation process breaks down the germination-inhibiting gel coating on each seed. It mimics what happens naturally when a tomato rots on the ground. After 3 days, add more water. The bad, immature seeds will float to the top. Pour those off. The seeds that sank, those are your viable seeds. Rinse them through a fine mesh strainer. Spread them on a paper plate, not a paper towel. They'll stick and tear, and let them dry completely for a week. Then store them in a labeled envelope in a cool, dry, dark place. Tomato seeds stored this way remain viable for 4 to 6 years. But here's the critical rule that most people miss, and that turns this entire effort into wasted time. You must use open-pollinated or heirloom varieties, not hybrids, not F1 varieties. Hybrid tomatoes, the kind that dominate grocery store shelves and a lot of garden centers, are bred to produce fruit with specific characteristics, but their seeds do not grow true to type. You might get something edible. You might get something strange. You might get almost nothing at all. The seed inside a hybrid is deliberately designed to be a dead end. That's the business model. Look for the words heirloom, open pollinated, or OP on the seed packet or plant tag. Varieties like Brandywine, Cherokee Purple, Amish Paste, a deeply appropriate choice given what we mentioned earlier, Matt's Wild Cherry, or any of hundreds of heritage varieties. These breed true. Their seeds are exactly as good as the plant that produced them. 1 tomato, 200 seeds, 4 to 6 years of viability. You never pay for tomato seeds again. But the next one might surprise you even more. Now let's talk about peppers. Peppers are tomatoes' quieter cousin in the seed-saving world. They're even easier to save from. No fermentation required. You just need to understand one thing about timing. The pepper must be fully ripe before you save the seeds. Here's where most people make the mistake. They pick their peppers green, especially bell peppers, because green is how they're sold at the grocery store. Green peppers are just unripe red, yellow, or orange peppers. The seeds inside a green pepper have not fully matured yet. Save them, and your germination rate drops dramatically. Let 1 or 2 peppers on every plant go all the way to red, orange, yellow, deep purple, whatever the final color of your variety is. Let them get soft. Let them wrinkle slightly. That's maximum seed maturity. Slice them open, scrape the seeds out, spread them on a paper plate, and dry them for a week in a warm spot with good airflow. Hot peppers, sweet peppers, banana peppers, poblanos, jalapenos, they all save the same way. 1 ripe pepper contains enough seeds for your entire garden, and your neighbor's garden too. Pepper seeds remain viable for 2 to 4 years in proper storage. 1 ripe pepper contains enough seeds for your entire garden, and your neighbor's garden too. Now for garlic. This one is almost embarrassing once you see it. Garlic does not produce seeds the way tomatoes or peppers do. Garlic propagates vegetatively, meaning you plant a clove and it grows into a full bulb. Every clove in a bulb of garlic is effectively next season's planting stock. You are never, ever buying garlic again. Here's the math. Plant 1 clove of hardneck garlic in October. By the following July, you harvest a bulb with 6 to 10 cloves. You eat 4 or 5 of those cloves. You replant the remaining 4 or 5 in October. Each one grows into a new bulb. You now have 20 to 50 cloves from your original single clove investment. In 3 seasons, a small initial planting becomes more garlic than most families can eat in a year, plus stock for ongoing replanting. The golden rule: always save your biggest, healthiest bulbs for replanting. Do not plant the small or misshapen cloves. The size of your replanting stock directly determines the size of next year's bulbs. Large cloves grow large bulbs. Small cloves grow small bulbs. The selection process compounds over years. Every generation of garlic you grow can be slightly better adapted to your specific soil and climate than the one before. 1 medium potato, cut into 4 chunks, can produce 4 plants. 1 plant produces anywhere from 3 to 8 pounds of potatoes under good conditions. Your single grocery store potato, headed for the trash bin, becomes 8 to 32 pounds of food. A few important notes. Commercially grown grocery store potatoes are sometimes treated with a sprout inhibitor, a chemical designed to keep them looking fresh on the shelf for longer. If your store-bought potatoes aren't sprouting even after weeks on the counter, this is likely why. Your best option is to source seed potatoes from a garden center, which are certified disease-free and untreated. Once you have 1 season's harvest from those, you save your own stock forever. Choose your most vigorous, disease-free tubers for replanting. Store seed potatoes through winter in a cool, dark, humid space. A basement corner works well. They should not freeze, and they should not completely dry out. Potatoes are one of the most calorie-dense crops you can grow. 100 square feet of garden space, well managed, can produce 100 pounds or more of food. No crop gives you more energy per square foot per dollar of input. Onions offer two completely different paths to free propagation, and both of them work. Path 1, seeds. If you let a single onion bolt, meaning you allow it to send up a flower stalk instead of pulling it at the end of its first year, that flower head will produce dozens of tiny black seeds. Onions are biennial, meaning they complete their full seed-producing life cycle over 2 years. In year 1, they grow a bulb. In year 2, they flower and set seed. To save seeds, overwinter a few bulbs in the ground or replant them in early spring. Wait for the flower heads to develop and dry. Then shake the seeds out of the dried heads into a paper bag. Path 2. Multiplier onions and potato onions. These varieties form clusters of bulbs rather than a single large bulb, and like garlic, they propagate vegetatively. You plant one bulb, harvest a cluster of 6 to 10, eat most, replant a few. Every year your supply grows. Egyptian walking onions take this even further. They produce small bulbils at the top of their stalks that literally bend over and plant themselves. Once established, walking onions propagate with essentially no effort on your part. For standard onion varieties, save your medium-sized bulbs for replanting. Too large and they may bolt immediately in year 2. Too small and they may not have the energy to mature fully. Lettuce bolts sends up a tall flower stalk when temperatures rise or when daylight hours get long. Most gardeners see this as a failure. The lettuce gets bitter. The plant looks wild and straggly. They pull it out. That is the single most expensive moment in a vegetable garden. Leave it. That bolted lettuce plant is in the process of producing hundreds, sometimes thousands, of seeds. The tiny flower heads dry out and produce seeds that look like small, flattened teardrops with feathery tufts. Once the seed heads are dry and you can see the individual seeds clearly, cut the entire stalk and place it upside down in a paper bag. Let it finish drying for another week indoors. Then shake the bag vigorously. The seeds will fall to the bottom. One bolted lettuce plant produces enough seeds to sow a bed of lettuce 50 times over. Lettuce seeds remain viable for 3 to 6 years in proper storage. Here's the next level. If you allow some of your lettuce to bolt and self-sow, just letting the seeds fall where they land, you'll find volunteer lettuce seedlings appearing in and around your beds the following season. This is the garden taking care of itself. Thin them, transplant them, or just let them grow where they land. Different lettuce varieties can cross-pollinate, so if you're growing multiple types and want to keep them genetically distinct, isolate one variety for seed saving by covering it with a mesh bag or row cover during flowering. But honestly, for most home gardeners, a little crossing between lettuce varieties produces interesting results without meaningful drawbacks. Now for squash. One summer squash or zucchini plant left to fully mature on the vine will produce a single fruit the size of a baseball bat. Inside that overripe, slightly terrifying squash are hundreds of seeds. This is intentional. Squash was designed by 10,000 years of agricultural selection to produce massive quantities of viable seed inside a single fruit. Native American agricultural traditions understood this. Squash, corn, and beans, planted together, created a self-sustaining system that fed entire communities. The squash seeds were part of that system, saving and replanting season after season. For winter squash, butternut, acorn, delicata, kabocha, spaghetti squash, the seeds inside the fruit you eat at harvest are already fully mature and viable. Scoop them out, rinse them, dry them on a plate for a week, and store them. That's it. A butternut squash from the grocery store or farmer's market contains easily 100 viable seeds. For summer squash and zucchini, the seeds inside a tender young squash, the stage when you'd normally eat it, are not yet fully mature. You need to leave one fruit on the plant until it's massive and hard-skinned and the plant itself begins to decline. Then harvest it, let it cure at room temperature for another 2 to 4 weeks to allow the seeds to fully harden inside. Then split it open and save the seeds. Cross-pollination is a real consideration with squash. Different varieties within the same species will cross readily if grown in proximity and insects are active. Cucurbita pepo varieties, zucchini, acorn squash, pumpkins, delicata will cross with each other. Cucurbita maxima varieties, Hubbard, kabocha, some butternuts will cross with each other but generally not with pepo types. If pure seed is important, either grow one variety per species or hand pollinate by using a small brush to transfer pollen from male flowers to female flowers and then covering the pollinated female flower with a bag until the fruit sets. Squash seeds remain viable 4 to 6 years. If you have been buying bean seeds, I need you to understand something. A bean seed is a bean. A dried bean you bought at the grocery store in a 1-pound bag for $1.49 is a viable planting seed. Beans are one of the most direct connections between grocery store and garden that exists in the plant kingdom. Rinse a handful of dried beans, navy, pinto, black, kidney, borlotti, cannellini, any variety that hasn't been cooked or canned. Let them soak overnight. Plant them an inch deep after your last frost date. They will germinate. For saving seeds from plants you've already grown, leave a few bean pods on the plant until they're dry, brown, and rattling, meaning you can hear the seeds moving inside when you shake them. Pull the pods, shell them, dry the seeds for another week indoors. Done. Bean seeds remain viable 3 to 5 years. Bush beans are self-pollinating, which means cross-pollination between varieties is rare. You can grow multiple varieties side by side without worrying about them crossing. This makes beans one of the easiest and most foolproof seed-saving crops in the garden. 1 pound of dried beans contains roughly 1,500 to 2,000 seeds. 1 row of beans from those seeds, well managed, will produce enough dried beans to eat all winter, and more seed than you can ever plant. You've been throwing this potential away for years. No more. Most herbs have 2 propagation methods available simultaneously: seeds and cuttings. Basil from seed. Let 1 stem go to flower. The tiny white flowers will develop seed. 1 mature basil seed head contains 40 to 80 seeds. Basil from cuttings. Clip a 4-inch stem just below a leaf node. Remove the lower leaves. Place it in a glass of water on a bright windowsill. Within 2 weeks, you'll see white roots emerging from the cut end. Pot it up. You now have a new basil plant for free from a plant you already owned. This works for mint, lemon balm, thyme, rosemary, oregano, and most other soft-stemmed herbs. Mint deserves a special mention. Mint spreads underground through rhizomes, horizontal roots that send up new shoots. 1 mint plant left in the ground becomes a colony in 2 to 3 seasons. Divide it by pulling apart the root mass and replanting sections wherever you want mint. It's virtually unkillable and self-propagating without any effort. Chives produce seeds freely. Let the purple globe flowers dry on the stalks. Shake them into a jar. You'll have seeds for years. Chives also divide readily. The clumps spread every year, and you can divide them with a shovel and replant sections anywhere in the garden. Dill and cilantro are the self-sowing champions of the herb garden. Let either of these go to seed and scatter seeds on open ground, and you will have volunteer plants reappearing in that spot year after year without ever planting a single thing. The garden remembers where you planted them. Most home gardeners don't even try celery. It has a reputation as difficult, demanding, fussy. And yet the propagation method for celery is so simple that children do it as a science project. Cut the base off a bunch of celery, the bottom 2 inches or so that you'd normally throw away. Place it cut side up in a shallow bowl or dish with about 1/2 inch of water. Set it in a bright spot. Within 3 to 7 days, you'll see new green growth emerging from the center. tiny, bright green celery leaves pushing up through the old base. After a week to 10 days, transfer it to a pot with good quality potting soil, burying it up to the base of the new growth. Water regularly. Keep it in a warm, bright spot. What you're doing is regenerating a new celery plant from the vegetative base of one you already consumed. The celery plant's root system is remarkably aggressive at regrowing from even a small crown section. This doesn't scale to a full production crop the same way as planting celery from transplants, but it gives you a continuous supply of celery leaves, which are more flavorful than the stalks anyway, for cooking, broth, and seasoning. For seed-saving purposes, let one celery plant bolt in its second year. Allow the white flower umbels to develop and dry, and collect the seeds that fall freely. Celery seeds are tiny, and they are, incidentally, also a delicious spice in their own right. Strawberries reproduce two ways: by seed, which takes years and is variable, and by runners, which is so fast and reliable that you can triple your strawberry patch in a single summer without spending a cent. A runner is a long, horizontal stem that the strawberry plant sends out along the ground, away from the mother plant. At intervals along that runner, small plantlets form, complete with tiny leaves and embryonic root systems. When those plantlets touch soil and are held in place, they root within 2 to 3 weeks and become fully independent plants. You don't need to do anything complicated. Just lay the runner along the surface of the soil. Pin it down with a small U-shaped piece of wire, a toothpick, or even a small rock placed over the runner node where the plantlet is forming. Water it. Within 3 weeks, sever the runner from the mother plant. You now have a new free strawberry plant. One established strawberry plant will typically produce 3 to 6 runners in a season. Each runner can produce multiple plantlets. In 2 to 3 seasons, a single purchased plant can multiply into a patch of 30, 40, 50 plants, providing quarts of berries every summer, indefinitely. Remove runners from plants in their first year to encourage strong root development. In year 2, allow the runners you want to keep for propagation and remove the rest. Year 3, you have a mature, fully productive patch that perpetuates itself. We end here because cucumbers are a perfect illustration of everything this video has been about. One cucumber. One fully mature, fully yellow-skinned, seed-ripe cucumber left on the vine past the point when you'd eat it. That one cucumber contains anywhere from 200 to 400 seeds. A cucumber seed packet at the garden center contains 25 to 30 seeds and costs $3 to $5. You do the math. The process mirrors squash. For seed saving, you need the fruit to reach full seed maturity, which means leaving it on the vine until it's yellow or orange-yellow and slightly soft. At that stage, the seeds inside are fully developed and viable. Split it lengthwise, scoop out the seeds and the gel surrounding them, rinse in a colander, dry on a plate for a full week, and store. Cross-pollination applies to cucumbers as it does to squash. Different cucumber varieties will cross readily if planted together and bees are visiting them. For seed purity, grow one variety for seed saving, or use the hand pollination technique described for squash. Cucumber seeds remain viable 4 to 6 years. One overripe cucumber from one plant gives you enough seed to plant a 100-foot row for the next 4 years. The cucumber was free. The seeds are free. The next generation of plants is free. And the generation after that, 12 crops, 0 seed spending, forever. This is how food systems worked for 10,000 years before the industrial agriculture model convinced us that seeds were products to be purchased rather than resources to be stewarded. The people who figured this out most profoundly, who built it into their entire way of life, were communities like the Amish, who never stopped treating food as a self-renewing cycle rather than a consumer transaction. Grow it, preserve it, save the seed, repeat. That's the whole system, and that's exactly what you'll find in Amish Kitchen Secrets. The 2-book bundle I mentioned at the start of this video. 100 real recipes built around the foods you're now going to grow for free. 45 preservation methods so that nothing you grow ever goes to waste. 300 years of practical wisdom about living well without depending on anyone. The link is in the description. $34, one-time, instant download. 30-day money-back guarantee, no risk. Because growing free food is powerful, but knowing what to do with all of it, that's where real independence lives. Start with one crop. Just one. Pick the one that spoke to you most in this video. Do it this week. Write the date on the label of your first seed envelope. That date is the beginning of something that compounds every year for the rest of your life. In year 1, you're learning. In year 2, you're refining. By year 3, your garden is largely feeding itself, seed to plant to harvest to seed again, and the grocery store has a little less power over you than it did before. One seed at a time, one jar at a time, one season at a time. That's how freedom gets built. Next week, we're going underground. I'm going to show you the one ingredient that changes everything about how plants grow. And it's not fertilizer, it's not compost, and it costs almost nothing. It's been sitting in your soil the whole time, waiting to be activated. Some people call it black gold. I call it the secret foundation that separates struggling gardens from ones that practically run themselves. The Miracle Soil episode drops next week. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. Because what I'm going to show you will change how you look at every square foot of ground you own. See you then.